Hello, everybody, and welcome to Paranormal Nation Radio. Not so normal. How's Denise and Ron doing this evening?
Doing good.
Great. You know what? Hey, Nigel.
Hey, Nigel.
And thank you for sharing. We appreciate it. One, you know what I was expecting? Sometimes when I hear that song,
What's that?
a stripper. One to walk out, throw off her sheet.
Well, don't look this way.
Sprunky and make her own.
Sprunky's one of the Ruby's favorite games.
Right.
And it just makes music. Weird sounding music, but it makes music.
Mm-hmm.
So how's your guys' weather down there?
It was 60 something. It's cloudy.
Clouded up now.
Cloudy.
You're supposed to be getting some cold weather coming in.
Yeah, it's next Wednesday.
Yeah. It's going to be just in time to make us get our ass out of town.
Your Arctic front's coming, tomorrow?
Yeah. For you guys, our heat up's coming tomorrow for 2 days, and then we go into the real deep freeze.
Yep.
See, just remember, we're not going to be on the shows on February 1st and 2nd.
What's the weather going to be Saturday afternoon for the old Houston Texans, the little dome team from Texas?
It's going to be cold.
Good. They'll love it.
That's right.
As you can see, we all know who Ron is rooting for.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Chiefs.
Lots of Chiefs fans down here.
Remember, Ron only roots for the team that he's bet on.
Chiefs are going to go all the way again.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a lot of Ravens fans here. So many people are from Baltimore here.
Right.
It's kind of weird.
And this weekend, down in your neck of the woods, how far are you away from Tallahassee?
3 hours.
Yeah.
3 hours?
Straight east.
Yeah, we know they're filming, and
They'll
we can't go that
be
way.
Cruel Summer 4 down there in Tallahassee this weekend, part of it.
Oh, this weekend?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, crap.
See, the thing is,
I want to be an actor.
On Tuesday.
I don't think it's that hard.
On Tuesday, we're seeing Rosalie.
That's just me. I just
remember Rosalie Cota, Bergerac now. We went to her wedding back in 2023 when I lost my job.
Right.
And she's coming down. We're going to see her on Tuesday. So she's coming down from
Hello, Mom.
What is it? Rhode Island, Connecticut, where, one of those states that all blends together. Okay. So we're going to go up. We're going to go see her down at the beach. Guess what they're calling for right now? I mean, right now. I know it's going to change, but they're calling for us to get a frozen mix.
Yep.
We ain't going to get it. They called for it before 10 days out, and it ended up being 45 degrees. So,
right.
But yeah, it's cold, but all it's doing is just getting us ready to get packing to go on that cruise.
Oh, Susan and Mike.
Hey, yeah. And then here in 4 days on the 18th of January, down in Panama City, you remember Christine from the restaurant?
Yeah.
Her brother, the comedian Rodney Norman, is going to be down there in Panama City doing a comedy show down there.
Well, that's still, it's a little further away, but I do have a niece that lives there. For us, starting on Saturday, we get to vote in a special Republican election.
For what?
Matt Gaetz just left his seat, so we have to vote on somebody. So that's what we're doing sometime next week before anything else happens. So we got all kinds of crap coming up, but like I said, all it's doing is getting us ready to get those swimsuits packed up, get the sunscreen. We're getting on the boat.
That's right. And you're going to be gone how long on the boat?
5 days.
Oh, okay. So February the 1st and 2nd, you won't be doing the shows.
Well, whatever date that is. It's not February 1st and 2nd.
February
3rd and 4th. Yeah,
okay.
February 3rd and 4th.
3rd and 4th. Okay.
Yeah.
That's no problem.
I'm not paying $30 a day for internet on the boat.
No. My God.
That's $30. I mean, we pay $60 a month for it here. So
right.
I ain't doing
But
that.
$30 a day?
Huh?
$30 a day or for the whole 5 days?
No, each day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's almost as much as the ticket to get on the boat.
Oh.
That's where they get you.
This thing is just.
That's where they get you is on this other stuff.
It's one thing after another.
And Mom says she's ready for the cruise.
Yep.
I'll bet they are.
Yep, we've got. We're running the taxi
She's
service.
flying down there, right?
Yeah, with his brother, and then
okay.
He's coming from Vegas, and she's our oldest. And then Emily from Kansas City is coming down. She's my hairdresser, that Lacey's best friend. More importantly, Lacey's best friend. And so she's coming down. And so we're going to be playing taxi driver for the family, getting people to and from the airport to the hotel.
Oh.
Yeah, and then we're going to ferry everybody to the ship that's with us because we can only seat 5. So Ron's going to ferry a couple over, and then we're going to go.
Right.
Unless I get my truck.
What truck? We don't. With all these people, luggage is going to be the bigger problem.
Oh yeah.
And we only have five seat belts. So even if we throw me in the back, it ain't going to happen.
Nope.
So
not unless you pack it all on top and strap it down.
Nope. Not scratching my car up for that.
Oh, okay.
Nope. I'm good. So, but yeah, we're all ready for our cruise, and we're also all ready to have on our guest. I got us a guest, and this time, this guest comes to us from Greenville, South Carolina. Came across him when our son-in-law, Tyler, sent me a message and said, "Hey, I met this guy. He might be a good guy to have on your show." And I said, "Oh, okay." And now finally, Tyler and I, after however many years he's been part of our family, we're now friends on Facebook. Well, what did I tell you? I don't send out friend requests. If I do, it's because somebody told me specifically to do it. I just don't do it. So he found out that's true.
Anytime we bring up paranormal, he's like, don't want any part of that. Nope. See ya. I'm out of here.
He's a little interested, but not so much. I mean, if we tell him that some place is haunted, he doesn't want to sleep there. Of course, neither does Ron. Ron doesn't want to sleep there either if I tell him it's haunted. He just wants to go and investigate.
Yeah,
whole different thing. So, but yeah, we're going to bring up John G. Clark Jr. and talk to him and find out what he's got to share with us about South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and any other thing that he wants to talk about. So welcome, John.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Welcome.
Yeah. I was hoping that we weren't catching you eating or something, because I'm always so good at getting people while they're doing something else.
No, actually, I was sitting back here behind the gorilla position, waiting for the cue to come on. So I normally start the show. I'm happy to be here, happy to be alive. No pun intended. And yeah, so I'm excited. I was actually sharing with the cast earlier before we actually went live that I have a book coming. It was picked up by a publishing company in South Carolina. I'll be inking that contract tonight. I've got about 3 additional books behind it, so I'm very excited for those to be released. Still kind of up in the air for the first book. I kind of want it to be called South Carolina's Haunted History. Originally, I thought Tales from the Script. Then I wanted it to maybe change to The Fall Harvest Begins and kind of run it like a Halloween. If you remember the great Michael Myers, right? His movie's 1978. It was Halloween, Halloween Returns, Halloween 2. So I do have a book coming. I think it's going to be the next book. It's going to be called Season of the Witch. And the reason for that is that I was actually going to include a witch tale in the first book, but I opted not to. And a lot of people think or believe when they hear the Salem witch trials or witch trials in general that only took place in the Northeast or Salem, and that's incorrect. South Carolina is tied to a couple witch trials. One is down in Fairfield County. That's, if you're familiar with South Carolina, Fairfield County, this is easily accessible online. You can actually go and type in Fairfield witch trials. It dates back, I think, to 1792. I believe 3 or 4 people was hung, or they weren't hung, but they were pulled together as witches because some dead cattle, and so it's a poor German lady who got tied up in it. Fortunately, she lived, but they did a lot of damage to her. And we also have a lesser known that will be shared in this book. Actually, I was going to share it in the first book, Season of Witch, and it's about the Lancaster witch trials that dates to 1813, or depending on where you are in the country, it's called Lancaster, but down here in South Carolina, they have an act for calling it Lancaster.
Oh yeah.
Don't ask me why. Don't ask me.
Oh, I know. It's the Appalachian way to say things.
Right.
Some words we stretch out for the Appalachians, and other ones we make smaller.
As you're familiar, a lot of places in South Carolina is named after Pennsylvania towns. Yeah, so you look at places like Chester, Lancaster, York. We had a lot of people from Pennsylvania move down and settle. And I always tell people, one of the things that surprises me is we don't have more Pennsylvania Dutch speakers down here, just because so many people from Pennsylvania came down. And so normally when I go out and meet someone, I always say "good dog," or "good dag," and they're like, "What are you saying?" I'm like, "Good day." I'm like, "That's Pennsylvania Dutch," So, so the Lancaster or Lancaster, I'm going to be careful here because I don't want anyone to come after me for saying it wrong. Supposedly dates to 1813. So it's not a lot of information known. I was able to track some of the key players to judge back during that time. He later went to become a South Carolina governor. Unfortunately, I'm not able to find the lady who was supposedly or allegedly, let's say alleged here, and I feel confident I'm not going to be pulled into a lawsuit from 1813 by misspeaking, but in this day and time, you never know. I can't find any information on her. I don't know where she's buried. And it wouldn't be uncommon, especially in 1813. They didn't keep very good notes. I mean, let's just be honest. As a historian, I find myself piecemealing a lot of information to try to get stories. So she could have been buried in a plot of land somewhere that we just don't know. I mean, was it marked? Maybe was it marked somewhere, And if she had the reputation of being a witch, then certainly they wouldn't have buried her. Her grave probably would have had rebar, or I don't know if they had rebar back then, but some type of bars around the grave.
Yeah,
something around it.
A lot of the churches, the old historical churches, have they do that everywhere, but the history, the churches will have history of the people that went there or things that happened in their town, even the pariahs that they cast out. They could have records of that if you find an old church, especially an old Episcopal or Catholic church. And Southern Baptists are great about that too.
I have been everywhere, and the problem a lot of times is, as you can see probably right behind me, you probably see my Funko Pops. I'm a huge Wizard of Oz fan, so if anybody sees it, so I kind of have a thing for witches, if you know what I mean. It's one of those things. Okay, so before we get into some scary tales, South Carolina is the heart of the Bible Belt. I'm gonna pull that out. And what I have found writing this book, even Season of the Witch, is that you have some areas they feel comfortable talking about ghostly tales. You have a lot of areas they don't want to talk about it.
Right.
Okay. Charleston, South Carolina, everyone says, "Oh, we love Charleston. It's haunted," and it is haunted. You can go. In the first book, I have the haunted city hall. In this book, is to the best of my knowledge, I'll use that. It's never been written about before in another book, or maybe it has, maybe one other, but it's not really. It hasn't been written about a lot. But you go to a place. You look at Charleston, they embrace their paranormal, they embrace their history. It's tourism. I wish more of these other towns and cities around South Carolina would also embrace it, because we have so many people moving to the Carolinas. On the Lantern, some months we reach almost 5 million people. A lot of those people are from the Carolinas. A lot of those people are not from the Carolinas. They are people that want to know more about our history. It intrigues them. Maybe they're moving here one day. Maybe they have no plans to move here. Maybe they have relatives here, but they want to learn more about the Carolinas. So that's my job. That's what I give them. You take a place like North Carolina, they're doing a very good job. They're placing legend and lore markers out, just like historical markers, to preserve their legend and lore sites. South Carolina's not doing that. So we have lost, I'm not going to say several, but we have lost some ghost stories due to development, like mainly the Somerville Light down next to Charleston. Then you have other places who don't want to talk about it. Potentially, there are smaller rural areas. When you bring up ghost, they take off running. You bring up ghost, the only ghost we believe here is the Holy Ghost. I've heard that. So it's been a challenge to write this book, because I wanted to cover areas that you typically don't hear about in other books. Columbia is written about a lot, Abbeville, Charleston, but some of these rural areas you don't hear much about. And I have really found through the research that now I know why you don't hear about it. It's not that they don't have ghost stories. They have plenty of ghost stories.
Yeah.
They don't want to be deemed as that.
They don't want to be deemed as evil or demons or something else, that they don't believe in God, when, what they don't get is in the Bible. There's more than one spirit listed in that Bible.
What they don't get. Yeah, what they don't get either, Denise, is, and I'm not going to turn this into a religion show, but I will say this. If I was preaching the word of God, does that not prove, as in, if you have non-believers coming to your church, okay? Well, down at Alice Flaggrave, the only ghost we believe in is the Holy Ghost. Well, good for you. But does that not support what you're saying when you're up, that there is an afterlife? So why would you not want to embrace spirits? And you may view them as demons. I've heard that argument. Well, if you run across a ghost, it's a demon. No, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. But if you're a religious leader, would you not want to embrace that there is an afterlife, right?
There are many that do. And in fact, we have one here in our chat room.
Gary.
Yeah.
Right. Pastor Gary Whitmer right there is on my team, my paranormal team.
Yep.
And he's
a retired pastor.
We get a lot from the pastors around. Why do you investigate paranormal?
Mm-hmm.
Like I tell them, do you believe in the Bible? What's it state in there? You got the Holy Spirit. They talk about ghosts. They talk about demons. Jesus Christ casted out 37 or plus demons in the Bible, but yet they don't want to believe in it.
There's a lot of things that they don't want to believe in this day and time. I'll just leave it at that. Versus the day that Jesus walked on earth, his church was completely different than the church you see today. And I'll leave it at that.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you're still not stoning people to death. You're not condemning people. You're not doing all those things. And also, I'll say this, that back in those days, not to bring it up, but there was no paid ministry. Okay. They didn't take money, but this day and time they do. But I'm not turning that. Look, I respect preachers to utmost. I go to church and I believe in God. But on the flip side of that, it's don't shoot down paranormal, try to make me feel bad for what I do to justify what you're doing. And my apologies. I thought my phone was on vibrate here, but
it's okay. Things happen.
Yeah.
It's probably somebody
Don't
saw
worry
you on
about
here and
But
probably
you
going,
all-
where can we find it?
But you all didn't come and invite me on the show for me to talk about that. You all want to talk about some South Carolina, some.
Right.
You know what? This is called Paranormal Nation Radio, not so normal. So we go wherever the guest wants to lead us down the road. As long as Michael Myers isn't there we're good.
Right.
Well,
And just a heads up, my maiden name is Myers. And I want to say hi to Judy, Wesley, Gary, and Laura. And of course, Ron already said hi to Karen. So we got everybody all covered. So if you guys have any questions Mike and Susan, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to put them in the chat and we will make sure we ask those questions and get you guys your answers. So how did you personally get involved in writing these books about the paranormal?
okay. So my experience with the paranormal goes back to when I was a child. The home, my mother still lives in the home. It's in rural South Carolina, one of those places that you don't see no evil and you don't talk about no evil, right? I never had an experience, but my mother certainly did. So there was a gentleman, when my mother and father bought the home, it was a smaller home and my father built on 2 bedrooms. And the original owner, his name was Clarence, he died. And my mother worked with his wife in a facility in South Carolina. She always said, "Oh, Clarence loved this house." Well, Clarence always wore a black brim hat. So my mother swore up and down that she would see Clarence at night staring into the bedroom. Now, you got to remember, this part of the house was added on. So Clarence's spirit didn't enter that part of the house. He was looking. But the middle room of the home also had a bed. So sometimes my mother would lay down in that bedroom. That was a part of the original home. And so throughout the years, I've heard the tales about Clarence, and I felt uneasy in the home. Okay, I'll say that, especially in that back part of the house. That really piqued my interest in the paranormal. About 30 plus years ago, we didn't have the internet, so we had the trusty library. Instead of doing the standard things of getting in trouble and drinking on Friday and Saturday nights, we always thought it would be nice to be able to go out and explore, especially going to parts of South Carolina that we weren't accustomed to. Because you got to remember, back then we kind of lived in a shoebox because we didn't know what we didn't know. And I remember I ran across a tale called The Hound of Goshen. And he is believed to be the oldest ghost story in the state of South Carolina. Some people refer to him as the Happy Dog. And his story is unique because the story of the Hound of Goshen is shared by 2 counties. That would be Newberry and Union County. So it's about a 5-mile stretch of road that extends through May Benton Township. And that's unlike South Carolina to have a place named Township, right? That's more Pennsylvania in that area. And the story behind the Hound of Goshen, and he does appear in this first book because he is my favorite. That was kind of our first ghost hunt. And I'm not even going to call it a ghost hunt as much as it was just riding the back roads through South Carolina, looking for a scare to kind of get away on a Friday night or Saturday night. I can't remember which night it was. So I don't know if you're familiar with that tale, but I'll be more than happy to share a little bit more with the Hound of Goshen.
Right now you got blank slates here, and I want to say hey to Crystal.
So I say he's believed to be the oldest tale, and as a historian, I always use that verbiage because there's always someone out to say, no, you're wrong. The gray man is the oldest. So he's believed to be the oldest ghost tale. Years ago, the dog was said to be a traveling companion of a gentleman that was crossing through the Cross Keys area. That area of Cross Keys was part of the old stagecoach route that used to extend through there. I'm not going to dive into it or go too much in depth, but back then they were trying to connect South Carolina as a waterway. So you'll see a lot of old canals still around, like Lockhart, Lansford Canal over in Chester. This is before locomotives came. They were hoping to connect all of South Carolina using an intercoastal waterway because they thought that was the future. Cross Keys Plantation was a part of the old stagecoach route. So that means you would pass through the area, you could get a good shot of booze, and you could stretch your legs before you head on down to Charleston. I believe it's the Philadelphia to Charleston stagecoach route. If I'm wrong, my apologies. So this dog came through this area. The man was accused of doing something. Back then they would kill you for being a thief. Okay, you didn't necessarily have to kill somebody to get the death penalty. I mean, these good old boys will string you up faster with a makeshift trial in the middle of the night, and that is what is believed to what killed his master when he came through. That he was accused of doing a couple of crimes that we don't know if he did or if he didn't do. It is said that the dog, there's two tales to it, that the dog grieved himself to death after the master was stoned to death or hung, whichever one. And then there's a story that the locals stoned the dog, killed the dog. So I've coined this area the Bermuda Triangle of South Carolina because you have a lot of war, you have a lot of death. There's even a crybaby bridge out that way, but I think every county has a crybaby bridge, so I don't talk too much about it.
In the country, yes. Every place has one, no matter where you go.
The one in Anderson, South Carolina is the real deal, but we could talk about that later.
Oh, well, then we know where Anderson is. We have to go through it.
Yes, it's over on Log Shoals Road. But getting back to this tale, so 30 years, I mean, you don't really hear about ghostly tales involving animals, right? You had the Beast of Bladensboro. You have some other cryptids that's around, but the Hound of Goshen is a ghost dog, okay? December of 2023, I was passing through the area of Union, and I stopped at the Zaxby's over on the bypass. I haven't ate all day, so I'm probably borderline hangry at this point in time, and I still have an hour, probably about an hour, 15-minute drive back to my home. And I stopped in, and there was a lady standing on the other side of the restaurant, and she has some people around her, and she screamed across the restaurant. She said, "Hey, I know you. I know you." And I looked up and I said, "Hey, you know me?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "You that guy that writes those ghost stories and about small towns, all that for South Carolina?" I said, "Yep, you got me. You got me." And she said, "I want to talk to you for a minute." I said, "Okay." And she said, "You can talk to me whenever you leave. We're going to be here for a little bit." So I hurried up and ate, and because I had to get back on the road, walked over, and she said, "You ever heard of the Happy Dog?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've heard of the Happy Dog." She said, "I moved up here about 3 months ago from Florida, and she was looking for a home. So she was wanting to put a mobile home, I don't know, but the reason why she didn't buy this piece of property was because it had a graveyard on it. Okay. So she thought that was cool, and she started taking pictures of the graveyard. It wasn't until later that she started looking at these images, and she captured the Happy Dog, the Hound of Goshen, in the pictures. And it is said that his master is buried in that cemetery. I believe it's Ebenezer Cemetery. She sent the pictures to me. She asked, could she send the pictures to me? I said, absolutely, you can send them to me. And I was excited because there's, to my knowledge, there's no known images of the Happy Dog. I got back here, Carl, and she sent the pictures to me later at night. The next day, I sent it to a gentleman that works, I'm not going to say his name, but he works with police and has worked with police for many, many years. with missing people, and I sent it to him and asked what was his thoughts on it. Did he think it was a fake? And within about an hour, he called me back. He said, "No, John, these are the real deal. They haven't been doctored." So I'm going to donate the images to the Union County Museum so they can display on the wall. So that's the Hound of Goshen in a nutshell. So he's an interesting tale. He's been written about many a times in other books. I'm a dog lover. I have my four-legged daughter at the house. Her name is Annie Oakley Clark, and she's the fastest paw in the East. So I just love dogs, and I guess that's why I'm kind of drawn to them.
So Gary in the chat just saw a big kitty cat.
When he says Columbia, he means Columbia, Missouri. Yeah. And when he says Macon, he means Macon, Missouri.
Yeah.
Macon, Missouri on 36.
Too awful far from you guys.
Do you know who lives in Macon, Missouri?
Who, me?
No, Carl. Do you know who lives
there?
Now? Do you know who lives in Macon, Missouri? Eddie Munster. Eddie Munster.
He used to.
Did he sell his grandmother's house?
Yes. He moved back to California, I believe.
Oh.
Just like Robin from Batman and Robin used to live in Chillicothe.
Ohio. Chillicothe, Ohio.
No, Chillicothe, Missouri.
Yeah,
Missouri.
Missouri.
Yeah, Missouri.
So I want to settle this debate. Is it Missouri or Missouri?
Yes, Missouri. Both. Depends on who you talk to.
If you're out of the state, it's Missouri. If you're in the state, it's Missouri.
I just want to settle the debate because I've heard it.
Misery. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's the state of misery. It's a show me state. And it shows you 15 inches of snow here a week or so ago. It'll show you.
We are so happy to not live there anymore.
Oh, I bet you are.
Oh, yeah. We lived in Missouri. Well, Ron was from Missouri.
St. Louis.
And his family's still there. And we lived in Missouri after we got married for a while. So, and you said that you're into the Wizard of Oz. You got some Wizard of Oz stuff. We lived in Kansas too.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, there in liberal Kansas, there is a Wizard of Oz museum.
Yep.
It's right behind the Super 8.
But I'm an even bigger fan of Ghostly Roads. That's probably my favorite paranormal ghost roads where you can see hitchhikers, ghostly hitchhikers.
Oh, okay.
And people often ask, because I know you all like going to buildings and things of that nature. I'm so much more of riding down the road. And because my mind plays a trick on me or says, hey, I'm driving down this road late at night and there's fog everywhere and the rain coming down. You see a ghostly gentleman with his thumb up, right? That captures my imagination more than walking into a vacant building somewhere, And I know you brought up that you go to Easley a good bit, the upstate. But have you ever heard of the Walhalla hitchhiker story?
Yes, I have actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I love writing about the Walhalla hitchhiker because we can actually go back and look at his origins, right? Because he is believed to be the pilot Larry Stevens that took off in the airplane in the 1950s, and he flew over the mountains here. He encountered a heavy rainstorm, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was engine failure or he just got disoriented, didn't know where he was because of the mountains, heavy rain, the fog, and he crashed. And his plane was found scattered all over the roadway. But Mr. Stevens, to the best of my knowledge, his body was never recovered. On October 6th or 7th, I actually drove to Mountain Rest, South Carolina. And I left that night. And when I got there, it was just like foggy. It was rain. I mean, it was that chill in the air. It's everything that you want in a paranormal story. And when I got out to take video images, right? And that video actually went viral, right? It was just like a 15-second clip of me going around looking like, but it was completely dark. You couldn't really see anything. I had the lights on. I had so many people in that area chimed in and said, I've never heard of this story. I've never heard of this story. And I get that a lot on the Lantern. I have a lot of people to come to the Lantern and say, well, I've lived here my entire life and I never heard that. Or I've lived here my entire life and I never saw anything. And I want to say this on this show. Just because it never happened to you doesn't mean that it's false.
Right.
Correct.
And I think that aggravates me more than anything. I wrote about a haunted church down in Abbeville, and the guy was a deacon there for like 80 plus years. And he sent me a message back and said, I've been in that church all day long and I've never experienced anything. I sent him that same message back. Just because you've been there and you never seen it doesn't mean that Elizabeth doesn't exist. You know, maybe she just never,
doesn't like you.
That's very
possible.
That's what I would just say. She doesn't like you, so she didn't come out to play. But yeah, I mean, we have that kind of stuff all the time where people will say, like we're new where we live. We've only been here a year and a half, and we have a lot of Bible.
We don't all experience the same thing.
No, even when we're
we
together,
investigate,
even when we're together, we don't all
Right.
experience the same thing. But we down here, we do a meetup once a month. And I've been putting it out there, and I get people that will send messages and go, can you prove ghosts exist? And I said, no, I cannot. But that doesn't mean that they don't. I can only tell you from my experience what I've witnessed, firsthand. I'm not going to tell you a story that somebody else witnessed because I'm skeptical. I don't believe them. I mean, do I believe them? Yes, I probably do believe them. I'm not going to share their story. But, we have people all the time that go, well, you're going to hell in a handbasket. And it's like, well, at least I'll have the handbasket there to keep me warm,
Right.
Things like that. So I'm used to hearing that. And when you're talking about the hitchhiker of Walhalla, Ron has a story that is very similar. And I have a story that's totally different, but it has to do with the roads.
She saw a ghost car.
Yeah. I saw a ghost car.
And so did our daughter that was in the car with her.
Yeah.
Saw the same thing.
And so did a bunch of other people who also called the police when we thought it all wrecked.
Which has been going on. We found out later, it's been going on for quite a few years. People have been seeing it and calling in.
But yet we don't know who it is.
Same car.
Don't know who it is, when it was. I don't remember what day it was that it happened. I just know it was in the daytime between 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
It's probably residual.
Yeah, it's probably residual.
It comes every year.
But I drove that road pretty much 5 days a week for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's really interesting because I've been speaking with a lady in Colorado, okay? And in 1946, a freighter hit the old Cooper River Bridge it's Grace Bridge, okay, down in Charleston, that old high bridge that used to connect Mount Pleasant to Charleston. And her grandparents and her dad, her father was only 6 months old at the time. So this old green Oldsmobile passed the Clapper family on the bridge at night, and the kids waved at them as they passed, okay? Got in front of them. So her grandpa was driving, her grandmother was in the front seat, and her father was 6 months old, was in the back seat. A freighter hit the bridge, ripped the bridge apart. Now, the entire bridge didn't collapse, but a portion of it did. And she told me that her grandfather, luckily they stopped the car in time before they plunged 150 feet into the water below. But the Lawson family wasn't as lucky. They went straight into the water 150 feet. She told me that her grandfather talked about seeing the kids turn around waving at him as they went off the bridge.
Oh, crap.
And said it affected him his entire life.
Yeah, because they probably weren't waving. They were probably doing this, like, help me, more than bye.
Well, and even more, so there's a ghost story tied to this. And when I pre-nubbed at the Citadel in 1995, a lot of the cadets would tell me, if you ever go to Mount Pleasant to partake in the sacrament of alcohol, and you coming back across the big bridge at night, and you see an old 1946 Oldsmobile, it's not because you've had too much booze. Just don't make eye contact. So the ghost story is, now that bridge has been replaced, but it is said that the Lawson family, it was 5 of them who lost their lives on that bridge that night. You can still see their car putting down the road on that old bridge. And when you get right up on it, and when you go to pass them, the entire family will turn around and wave at you before they take a hard turn off the bridge. Okay.
Oh, crap.
Okay. So if you look at them, what?
Nothing happens. And but that bridge has been replaced. That bridge was replaced in 2005. And people says, well, that was tied to the old bridge. But then there's many that believe that if the conditions are just right, even on the new bridge, you can still see the family in their 1946 Oldsmobile putting across
still
the
the
bridge.
same road.
Yeah, it's still the same road.
Yeah, it's still the same road.
Isn't it in the same place that the old bridge was?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
I mean,
why.
it's just a residual, and in most cases, residuals are.
Yeah, find out the day it happened and about the time, and I'd be hanging out in that spot.
I'd be driving by with cameras on my car, going snap, snap, snap.
Well, Carl, every February,
back and forth.
Every February, and that's when it happened. It was February of 1946 when a portion of this bridge collapsed, and people, sees the family every year right around February. Now, I'm not saying that there's any other time of the year that it's. I'm not saying it's only for February that you're going to see this family. They have been spotted other times, but their sightings really pick up right around that anniversary time frame. So, so I believe in ghost cars. That is a tale that was told to me in 1995, and it's been passed down generation, all the way down. And I find that very interesting. To me, that is haunted history. That's what you're going to find in this book. You have history, it's haunted, you have a paranormal tale to it. Okay. That was kind of what I was looking for with these stories. And I was blessed to be able to find the Clapper family, who now lives out west in California and Nevada. And I'm thankful that they were willing to open up and talk about it, what their grandpa, grandma, and father endured on that bridge. Luckily, they stopped in time. The other family wasn't so lucky. They went into their afterlife, and and they're still driving around.
Right. Well, that's kind of like up here when we first started our paranormal team. My pastor, Gary Whitmer, was also the county zoning commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to investigate our 1898 courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Every time we'd go investigate the courthouse, we'd go across the street to the sheriff's office to let them know we'd be in there in case they seen flashlights in there and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd go, that's all right. Have you guys ever been to the Cox Cemetery? Well, we did. Said no. And they said, well, you need to go check it out. So we started looking into it, and we took it over because the lady mowing out there had a rattlesnake on the deck of her lawnmower. And she said, that's it. So Gary started mowing, and we started investigating it. Well, every time we go out to the cemetery, we'd stop by the sheriff's office and let them know we'd be out there in case somebody drove through and reported somebody in the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
They go, that's fine, because if something happens out there, we're not showing up until the sun comes up. And we went, why? All the deputies and the sheriff have seen cavalry soldiers on horseback and wagons, which our cemetery sits in an area on top of a hill that is associated with the Mormon War that we had here in Missouri. Hans Mill Massacre is 3 miles away, and stuff. So yeah, I've heard the horses whinny. I've heard them walking up and down the gravel road out there. But as far as seeing them with my eyes, I haven't got to see them yet. But yeah, there's residual all the time everywhere. And what's funny is the cemetery was donated by my great-great-great-grandfather, who's buried there. I didn't know that. And growing up in the area, I'd never heard it was haunted. So, yeah.
First of all, it's hard to find.
Yeah, you
out in the middle of nowhere.
You can finally now get there following Google Maps, but you couldn't for a long time. If it wasn't for Gary and Carl, we never would have made it out there the first time.
Right. And in our cemetery, you got a 1847 cemetery with 80 people buried, and there's 58 headstones. We know there's 80 people buried there through the records.
Yeah.
But one of them has a headstone, and nobody knows anything about it, and it has the unknown Indian on the headstone.
And there's a couple different legends that go with it.
Well, you also have
a couple of legends that go with
At
it.
least a couple.
That's like we had the grave of the little boy here in Graniteville. It's not, no one knows who this little 12-year-old boy was that passed through Graniteville. But to this day, people still go out. They still leave toys on his grave. He was passing through near Aiken, South Carolina on the train, and he reportedly fell ill. So when he got to the train station, it was he was very sick. So there was a couple women that escorted him off, and they didn't know who the little boy was. Well, he ended up passing away. So his headstone reads, "Grave of the Little Boy." And Graniteville Cemetery is said to have a witch. So late at night, you'll hear children's voices, especially around the grave of the little boy. You hear kids laughing, but when the witch shows up, the children go quiet late at night. So that is a tale around Graniteville Cemetery, the grave of the little boy, and people has actually picked that up. You can hear children laughing like they're having a great time. Reportedly or allegedly, the toys will move on his grave. They do come out every so often to clean the toys off. A lot of people has asked, hey, last time I was out, not a lot of toys on the grave of the little boy. Is someone stealing those? I checked with the cemetery board. No, they actually go out every so often, take the old toys off because they become waterlogged, damaged, being left out in the weather, and they want people to be able to go out and put new toys on.
Yeah, well, there's not only that, you've also got mowers. Somebody's got to mow. Somebody's got to weed whack, and you got all this stuff out there. It's just so hard to get around. That's one of the things that we've noticed about the cemeteries here in Florida, because we're in a rainforest area, and people here tend to, first off, concrete on top of the grave. That's one of the things that's very common, and put fencing around their graves, whether it's rocks or cinder blocks or fence. They tend to do this.
They're more like a family plot.
Yeah, like family plots. You can't mow easy. Here you're weed whacking most of the time. It's very difficult. And I know that, we go by some of these graves that there's so many trinkets and stuff on, and it's great to see that they're loved, but a heavy wind comes through and they're gone. We were just at the graveyard on Tuesday. Well, everybody knows we got interviewed by the newspaper. We went to the graveyard, and all of these flowers were outside of the holders, the toys that people had left and stuff. You don't know who they belong to. So all you can do at that point is either pick them up and find a place for them or throw them away. So, but I also want to say hi to Julie Crystal, my cousin, and Whitney. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah,
if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask.
First time.
Yeah, if you ever want to know anything about the Carolinas, now's the time to ask. I'm here.
So you were talking
how
about
many is in your group?
In my group?
Yeah.
So we're a media organization. So we're set up with the state of South Carolina. So several years ago, we started writing about niche topics. And what I found was that there was a lot of paranormal sites, but there was none that was actually writing articles. They were sharing what they could find online to their page. I came through and said, this is a unique concept. Okay. How about if I give you niche news that you actually want to read instead of this other crap that you see, plastered all up and down, and you can go to 100 different other news sites to get the same information. And I just basically take it, niche it, turn it out to the unexplained, true crime, the paranormal, history, small towns, attractions, road trips, and put it out.
So unique news.
Unique news. And what I found was that we have a lot of paranormal sites to follow us, and we appreciate that. And we even love it even more when you share our content. We're really the only ones. We write our own articles. We are a news organization. We were set up in April 2021, even though we were a page before then. We are approaching 5 years on February 18th, 2025, or next month will be 5 years. So Easy is a part of our group, and he used to go out and do some investigations. He just actually finished an investigation a few months ago. I wasn't able to go because we had sickness in our home, COVID at that time, and I wasn't going to go out and expose anyone else, even though I felt good. And they went to Hell's Gate over in Spartanburg, the old cemetery. It used to be a pauper's field, okay? And that was a very haunted location. So when you say my group, we're a little bit different. Occasionally we will go out. I was invited to go out to an investigation next weekend down in Hemingway, down next to Myrtle Beach, for another location that's going to be in the book. It's a haunted bakery that's been investigated before, but typically you won't find me out investigating. We write about those niche type of items. And our hope is that we're going to preserve these tales so our grandkids, great-grandkids, so it will be shared and passed down to generations after you and I are long gone from this world. That's my hope, And
well, that's the whole thing. If it's not written down somewhere, it's not going to be found.
Right.
I mean, yes, the internet is there, but print is there. If you watch the movie The Time Machine, the new one, not the old one, that's the only thing that's left is the New York Public Library. And there were some books in there. They didn't make it, but the internet did, which is funny. But still, those print books are the things that we're going to refer back to forever and ever.
I did.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Denise. I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're all good.
While it was still on my mind. So I did an article on the Somerville Light. We have lost that to development. They had Pay Paradise to put up a parking lot. And there were so many sweet memories of people sharing it all over. I don't know how many times. I want to say it was shared 1,500 times. All these people that were in high school, maybe they don't live in Somerville anymore. Maybe they have moved, but they're friends. Social media is a way for us to stay connected, if it's used like it should be used, to stay in touch. All these people were sharing and saying, remember the time we went out, we were in high school, and we went out seeing the Somerville Light. Yeah, it's a shame what they did. They have put a Publix out here, I'm just saying, or a grocery store or apartments. That's what I'm trying to prevent from happening. Look, we don't need to give our history away. And yes, I do think that paranormal and history are connected. They're always going to be connected at the intersection. Yeah. Okay. Don't go out to sell off our history. I don't care if you're in Florida, if you're in Georgia, or if you're in Utah. You don't go out and just steamroll over land to put up houses. Guess what they're not thinking about? Here's something else these developers are not thinking about. Whose problem is that 20 years down the road when the homes are haunted?
Right.
Because of their stupid decision to build on top of a haunted location or a battlefield because of the Civil War. News alert in South Carolina, Columbia down to the coast, a lot of battles and skirmishes of the Civil War. Columbia North, this is Revolutionary War battle country. Okay. Mm-hmm. So whose problem is that going to be when you put in 200 units of homes and 10, 15 years down the road, oh, mommy and daddy, my home is haunted. Well, that can't be. This is a brand new home. Well, you build it on top of a land that's haunted.
Yeah. Every house we've lived in has been haunted, but we're not sure if it's just me or the house. The first one was the house. The second one was probably me and my kids. Mm. And this one, I see stuff all the time. Not in my house, in the backyard. But, I'm so busy, I don't always see stuff in the house anyway. So, but, you're talking about history and how things, happen. We have a family story that goes with Spartansburg. My mom's cousin died at exit 77. Mm-hmm. On the exit, he was driving off the exit ramp and he had a heart attack while he was driving. And at the time, he threw the 18-wheeler, fully loaded 18-wheeler. He fixed it he did something to save the people in front of him.
Plates of steel or something?
Yeah.
Something really heavy.
Something really heavy. And he shut off the vehicle is what he did. And ended up in the grass, but he took nobody else with him. So when he died a hero because he didn't take anybody else, and the road was busy that day. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that might be, if people see anything down there. I have not been to Spartansburg yet. Okay.
You talking about Spartanburg over beside Greenville?
Yeah.
Yeah. Exit 77 on 75, I think it is.
Yeah, it's not far from you.
No, 85. 85.
Yeah, off 85.
So
yeah.
Like I said, I've not been there yet. I know I've been.
Yeah, it's exit 77.
Yeah, it was exit 77.
That's what you're.
Yeah, they I think they had to put a QT. It's like with anything else. They have went in and just built. That entire area is haunted, even all the way up to Gaffney. Gaffney, just a couple exits up. That would be exit 90 and 92. That city is tied to 2 serial killers. The Gaffney Strangler from 1966, 67, and almost 40 years to the date, you had Patrick Tracy Burris, who came through the area in 2009 and killed 6 people in Gaffney. And so we have a lot of history here, and I always encourage people to come to South Carolina. And, we have wonderful places outside of Charleston. You don't have to go to Charleston to experience the history and the haunts. Abbeville, South Carolina, I heard that per capita that Abbeville is more haunted than Charleston is, because that was where the Confederacy was born. Ironically, it's where the Confederacy died in 1865 at the Burtstorp Mansion. A lot of haunted.
We have the theory about Leavenworth, Kansas being more haunted than Atchison, Kansas.
Right. Probably is.
Because Atchison went out and they advertised, and Leavenworth said, nope, not us. And, Leavenworth is one of the oldest cities in the West.
Atchison embraced it, and they're making money. Leavenworth, nope. Don't want anything to do with it.
So it would have saved us some mileage. if Leavenworth had admitted
it.
Well,
so
remember when we started this podcast, I said I wish more places would embrace the paranormal, especially in Florida, where you had a lot of tourists coming, South Carolina. I mean, it could really change a lot of these smaller towns that are economically depressed. They could turn it into tourist dollars. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had people send me messages and said, John, if you run across a haunted bar, haunted eatery, let me know. If you've run across a haunted hotel, let us know. Okay. Let's start embracing some of this stuff. So I still don't understand. I still don't get why people don't. Some will talk about it. Some won't. To each his other. You know, I've got energy. Yeah, I've got energy around me. You know.
Yeah, we've interviewed and talked to lots of people, and they're either willing to talk all about it, or
they turn around and walk away,
or want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, we even have family members that won't talk about. In the minute I start talking about paranormal, they basically go, we don't want to hear you. And they will talk over me so that they don't hear it.
George, well, like you said, all these small towns, even across America, that's got haunted locations, they ought to increase their tourism. Embrace it.
They should.
It would help the little towns.
It doesn't cost them anything by embracing it.
No, it doesn't.
No, actually, like Crystal said, she went on quite a few haunted tours in Charleston. Well, with shows that are being shot live in South Carolina. Okay. We know that OP Live and Live PD for years has been in Richland County.
And Greenville.
Yeah. And now, now they're in, Berkeley County and still Richland. Just that those shows being there, people actually go to those towns to see if they can find one of the police officers that are their favorites.
Right.
So it's the same sort of thing.
Denise, you brought up something. I want to touch on this really quick. You brought up about the tour guys down in Charleston. Mm-hmm. I want people to err with the side of caution. Okay. If you go down to Charleston and you go to take a tour, I'm not trying to encourage you or discourage you for doing it. Take it with a grain of salt of what you're told. Okay. Just because someone has been in town for 5 years and claims to be a Charlestonian, you are not a Charlestonian. You don't know the story. And I'm not saying that some stories don't get fabricated and make themselves sound.
We know they do.
We know.
We know.
Everybody here knows.
Yeah.
So, Denise, I'll tell you, we were on Ghost Adventures, and when we did all that, the town that we were doing the tours in, Atchison, was bound and determined that a little girl died on a kitchen table in the house due to a botched appendectomy, and I could find zero proof of it. No. So I spent years researching and giving people facts of things for them to come up with what the truth is. And still some people don't care. They want the mainstream media bull crap, and they want to believe it wholeheartedly. And then you've got the other people that are like, I love the fact that you went in and you did all this research and you can tie, all these things together, got a little daisy stitch here, or everything's tied together in one pretty little story. Even though I told them there are holes in this story, but the holes are more on the side of the people that originally wrote the story. And that was the key. It was a written story that they made this house fit to this story, and that had nothing to do with the truth. Right. Charleston is probably the same way, same as, Columbia and, Milton, Florida, and Pensacola, things like that. There's always going to be somebody Right, like Malvern Manor. They have a story that they're sticking to, and they're not going to deviate from it because it aired on TV, and now they can't let it go.
I watched
just the way that it goes.
I watched a video the other night. They were talking about the Great Fire of 1861 in Charleston. Okay. For the people that's tuning in, Charleston has been burned several times. They've had several great fires. Okay. I think that town has been torched, or city has been burned like 5 or 6 times. Okay.
Baltimore's the same way.
Yeah. And so I was watching this, and I did a article on the powder keg or powder room or whatever down in Charleston. It's the oldest government building still standing. So that building had walls like 6 foot thick. It has sand built into the eaves of it. So because that's what it did. It was an arsenal. It stored, gunpowder, the powder keg. So if it exploded, they wanted the blast to go straight in the air, and then the sand would come down to put the fire out. So that's early engineering at its finest. Now, does it work? I don't know. And thankfully, they never had to test it out. I was listening to this gentleman, and I'm not going to say who he was or where he's from. And he said, "Is the Great Fire of 1861 tied to a witch?" I'm like, okay, you've got my attention. Well, the Great Fire started, I believe it was off of Meeting Street, somewhere in that vicinity. And I'm going to share this in Season of the Witch. And it went all the way down, and it almost hit the building where the ammunition was stored. Next door was the home of a prominent judge in that area at one time. And so Charleston got its name as the Holy City because they were very tolerant of different religions. They were welcoming. Now, did they get along with these folks? I don't know, but I know they were tolerant. That's why they're the Holy City, right? So a lot of people did travel out of the Northeast down. So you think about the Salem witch trials during this time. You think about other people like the Whistling Doctor. There's a ghost story about a prominent doctor who moved down here. So many people moved to the Holy City during this time. And there's a little place right outside of the city where it was said that the witch, or there was a lot of witches, that settled, and they took it to covenant. And there was one lady named Emily Dickerson, not Dickerson, but Dickerson. And she was tied in with the covenant, and she was kicked out. Now, don't ask me what it takes to be kicked out of a covenant. I'm not part of a covenant. I've never been a part of a covenant.
Not a clue.
I have no clue. I have no clue. She went downtown to be a seamstress. And while she was there, that she was up to a lot of no good. And she got, they conspired to kill somebody, and she was tossed into the provost dungeon downtown. Well, weeks passed, and someone traveled from Europe, and they were meeting with the judge. And it might have been a year later. I don't know what the time lapse is. And he said, I just don't know what to do with Miss Dickerson, because I've got her over in provost dungeon, and we're not going to burn her at the stake or anything. And I want to say this about witches. I hear all the time about burning at the stake. Okay. These were Anglo-Saxons. Okay. In South Carolina, we didn't burn people at the stake. Okay. That may have been somewhere else. So when I hear people say, well, this witch was burned at the stake. And so the gentleman from Europe said, we need you to release her. Well, the judge released her, and she said, I'll get you, right? Well, she conspired to kill him. Well, at this point in time, the judge said, I've had enough. Okay, you put a hit on my life. Now you're going to burn at the stake. It is believed, if this is real, because this is what was told online, this is where I want people to be really careful about the information you get online. This is why we triple fact check things when we write about it. She's the only one that's ever burned at the stake in Charleston. And it was right in Meeting Street where the Great Fire of 1861 started. And as the flames were coming up on her, she said, I will do to you as what you've done to me. And then the flames just engulfed her. 150 years later, the Great Fire breaks out. Well, the building in question that was beside the doctor supposedly it housed Confederate troops. And there was one young gentleman out of Tennessee that was down here serving, and he said he had a dream about this lady standing over him and said, I need you to go down to the Cooper River Bridge. I need you to go and find a witch's cask, because when they burned her at the stake, they put her ashes in a cask and sealed it off with I can't think of it right now. Wax. So he got up in the middle of the night. She said, if you go and retrieve this, I will give you riches. You'll be far richer than anybody alive. So he gets up, he goes down, he digs around, he finds the witch's cask. Well, the next night. So the next night, while he's boozing, okay, you got polyester on, so it's hot outside around 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night. He says, I wonder what's in this cask. And it said he's the one who unlocked the witch's curse upon the city, and it burned all the way down. Okay, that's what was being told a few years ago during COVID. You know what the real tale is, or what is believed to cause the Great Fire of 1861? Some guys were down having a good time at that very intersection in a fish fry, and they're the ones who caught the city on fire.
All it takes is one ember. Look at California.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Crystal says there were no witches burned in the U.S. They were hanged.
Yeah, because it's Anglo-Saxons. We're not going to burn you at the stake.
Yeah, Anglo-Saxons. That's not their way. Even in Europe, they didn't burn. Now over in Ireland and Scotland, they might have, but in England, they didn't.
But you see how it gets twisted to get people to come on your tour. Now, I'm not saying I certainly wasn't there. I don't know what the hell happened to Emily Dickerson. I don't even know if there was an Emily Dickerson that even existed. Okay. Mm-hmm. But when I listened to this tale, I was hooked line. I was listening and I was like, wow, this is like full cinema, right? I had it in my mind. I will get you, Yeah,
you're going, this is a great story.
Right.
It's not real.
Right. But
that's how I was with the Sally House. I watched everything I could find. The internet didn't exist until later on. Here I find it in 1994. Internet's very, very young. Not everybody has it. You can only you can only read books and crap.
Yeah, Al Gore hadn't refined it yet.
Yeah, hadn't been refined well enough for us to have it in our homes. Hell, computers weren't like they are now either.
Yeah, dial-up.
So I did. Yeah. So, I had to do all this research by hand at first. But then when we finally went to the location on our own, we went on a tour and then we went to the location, and I was pissed, first off, because there was so much, they took so much away from the story by telling a false story.
Mm-hmm.
on sightings, on My Ghost Story, on any show that had the Sally House on there. And as we move forward in time, the stories got more outrageous. So that was part that really pissed me off. Okay. Is that when I got in there, the location didn't match the story. What I'm seeing doesn't match
what
anything.
I'm buying.
Yeah. It was all kinds of, when we were tour guides, I would tell people all the legends. I said, there are multiple legends that go with this house, and I would go into each one of them. And then I would tell them, And then this is what we know, for fact. And because of that, I got less obsessed. But I know what you mean by when you hear a story, you're going, something's not right. I got to go research this, and I got to prove what's right. They may be telling you the truth, but you don't know that until you go and you look at all the facts.
Right. And you have to remember, it's a business, right? And I hate to say this, but in places like Charleston in the last 5 years, a lot of those places have become a dime a dozen. They pop up overnight. You come down, you're unexpecting. You go down, wow, okay, bring $20 in hand, and we're going to tell you some ghost stories. Now, we don't give a damn if it's real or fake, but we're going to tell it to you of how it's told to me. So that's the part I'm trying to get out. Tell it like it's supposed to be told. Right. And it sounded great. I mean, like if I didn't know no better and I was listening to this, I would have been going around telling everyone that a witch started the Great Fire of 1861, 150 years later after her death, after she was burned at the stake. Okay. But did that really happen? Probably not.
But when you say 1861, the thing that hits me in the head? It's the Civil War.
Yeah.
Why couldn't the fire have been started by the Union Army?
Well, you got to remember, so the first shots, we actually just celebrated the first shots of the Civil War on January 9th, 1861. That's when the Citadel Cadets fired on the Star of the West? The ship, the northern ship that was going down to supply Fort Sumter, the federal troops. And that was, by historians, we classify that as the first shots of the Civil War, but officially the Civil War wouldn't start until 3 months later in April of 1861.
Now, see, if you talk to some people in the Midwest, one of the stories that I read is related to this guy named Reverend Elijah Lovejoy. He was an abolitionist, and he wrote a newspaper in St. Louis, and he left St. Louis because they kept throwing his printing presses in the Mississippi River. So he moved over to Alton, Illinois. He got word that they were going to come and toss his printing press in the river again. I mean, this is huge. I mean, these printing presses back then were huge. Yeah. So it took a lot of people. And he died being shot for his abolitionist views, trying to save his printing press from going into the river. And this was in the 1830s. And some people consider that the beginning of the Civil War because it brought to light the fact that there were many more abolitionists than they thought. Like I said, it depends on what part of the country you're in as to what the facts are, like Virginia and John Brown. We got John Brown all over from Kansas to Virginia.
Right.
And he started, he killed people on the Kansas state line down at Meredithine. And that was prior to the Civil War as well, which was also a catalyst for the Civil War starting.
Right.
So it's like, okay, which thing really, what was the thing that really broke the camel's back that made them go to war?
April 1861 is what broke the camel's back. It wasn't the Citadel Cadets firing on the Star of the West on January 9th. We know that. It was the shots fired, I believe it was April 14th, 1861. And even interesting, I've been researching a book called I'm actually thinking about writing this book. I've had a lot of people reach out to me. It's called Creating Lincoln. It'll be the title. And in this book, I tell you how Lincoln is a creative man. He was a very weak man, very weak president. And many years ago, Rutherford County, North Carolina came out and said, we got proof that Abraham Lincoln was born here. In this book, I confirm when it comes out, yes, he was born in Rutherford County, North Carolina, but was he conceived in the upstate of South Carolina? Was his mother a barmaid at a tavern here? And is that why he held the views? Is that why there was no fighting in the upstate of South Carolina during the Civil War? Because of family. Was he so mad? Was he so mad at the way his mother was treated that he held these views? I will get you. You don't treat my mother that way. You know, did he hold a personal vendetta against the South? And you know, we can go into a lot of different things of why the Civil War started, but we'll share that for another show because
we got all kinds of things we would want to have dates and facts to go with it, not just anecdotal stories that we know off the top of our heads, So, but there was no fighting in Maryland except at Antietam.
This is what I tell a lot of people just coming on to the podcast, and thank you so much for having me. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Just even coming into a show like this, that I don't really know what we're really talking about. I know we're talking about paranormal, but I can't prepare for it. Just like in my first book, I got 45 chapters in this book. Okay, they're all heavily researched. I write about Georgia. I write about North Carolina. So I get a lot of people that come to me sometimes and they start talking about paranormal. And I appreciate all the PM private messages we get. I appreciate the people that reach out to me or they see me out in different areas. They'll come up and speak. If I'm ever seem like that I'm scatterbrained on something, it's because I kind of got to be the jack of all trades. It's not like I can just concentrate on Greenville, South Carolina, and I can tell you everything about Greenville. I get people from Raleigh asking me questions. So, yeah. So please, if we're going to dive into a story like that, yes, I like to have my facts. I like to have everything so I can be more intelligent at that point in time. Paranormal stories, I remember a lot of the gist of a lot of paranormals. So as long as I give you a little bit of mayonnaise on the sandwich, on those, we're still good. I can definitely get you in the vicinity, especially just coming off, off the cuff of talking about paranormal stories.
Yeah, you've done great.
Certainly history stories, you got to be a little bit more precise on those.
Right.
Because it's history. That's how it needs to be. Paranormal, we don't have to be 100% precise. We just know that if the history backs up what we're saying, that's what we need to know.
Right.
So, and you said mayonnaise. Which mayonnaise is your brand?
Oh, you know what it is. It's Duke's Mayonnaise. It's cut here in 1918. Duke's Mayonnaise is the home. South Carolina, Greenville is the home of Duke's Mayonnaise.
Oh, I know. Because Tyler he would tell me that was the mayonnaise. And when we got it in Kansas City, I bought it for him. And I'm sorry, I buy Blue Plate. It's out of New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm from Baltimore, so I'm a mishmash of everything. Mayonnaise. Yeah, he doesn't eat mayonnaise. He gets sick when he sees it.
I believe, okay, there's 2 condiments in the South. And if anyone could ever master this, anyone that's listening to me right now or listening to this podcast, if you can master this and turn it into a restaurant, you will be a multimillionaire. If you could take ranch dressing and turn it into a drink, other like food, anything with ranch dressing, because they go crazy for that down here. And if you can also do the same with mayonnaise, like if you can just build an entire menu just off of those 2 items, you will be a multimillionaire, especially in South Carolina. Well, Denise, you got to remember, everything.
I know.
Everything here is deep fried. We have a state fair. They take Oreos and deep fry Oreos.
Oh yeah, I do it up here.
Who the hell eats that?
You can marinate chicken in ranch, and then cook it.
Yeah, you can got the right amount of acid and everything else. You got it made.
Pickle juice.
Our daughter, I swear, our daughter used to drink ranch. I swear, we would go through a bottle a week, and they'd go. We went into after she had a procedure done, and we went to Chick-fil-A to get her some food, and they go, would you like any sauce? And I said, yeah, ranch. I said, she drinks it. And they gave me a whole bag full.
Oh man.
Ranch. And Chick-fil-A's ranch is not the best. I mean, let's be honest. It's not.
None of it is.
I know. I've got one here that we've always got to have ranch.
Mm-hmm. Do you know how much sugar is in ketchup?
Yeah.
you know how much sugar is in ketchup?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I saw something interesting, and I'm not talking bad, but they plastered a map up, like the average mortality rate, like across the 50 states. And I hate to break it to us Southerners, we didn't perform very well on that. I think the average mortality was like 57, right?
Yeah.
Or somewhere. I mean, down in Texas, Carl. Are you down in Texas, the great state
No,
of
I'm
Texas?
up in Missouri.
You're up in Missouri. That's right. Us Southerners, we didn't perform well. So let's just say that I looked at that and said, okay, you know, you're kind of burning the candle at both ends. Eventually, it's going to catch up with you. And by me looking at that, and I just brought it up, fried Oreos. I mean, everything is deep fried here. You got the ranch on top. You got the mayonnaise. You got the ketchup flowing like sweet wine. You know, you have all of that. And so I don't really try to eat that much. But if I am going to eat a sandwich, it is going to be Duke's mayonnaise on that sandwich.
So, okay. Now I'm going to say something else. You're going to laugh, possibly. So when Hurricane Helene, tropical storm hit, we were in Easley. Okay. We were there.
You were close to
So
me.
we left Florida where they said it might hit to go to someplace where it definitely hit. We're in a hotel there. And, you know, we're some of the few people there that needed to go out and get something to eat. We did not have anything there to eat. Why in the hell was everybody out driving around looking for someplace to eat? There were lines around every building that had a drive-through that was open. Why? Do you guys never get any bad weather?
Oh, we get that. Well, okay. So I see the meme.
Yeah, does anybody cook at home?
Didn't look like it.
Or they just don't have deep fat fryers at home.
So I see all the memes about people making fun of Southerners in the snow. And what I'll say is this, as you're fully aware, I wasn't too far from you during Hurricane Helene. And this area got tore up pretty bad.
Downtown area got really bad. Drowned, you know, there was so much that was flooded.
We walk outside when we hear about tornado warnings.
Oh yeah.
And then I hear other people from parts of the country. Now, I'm not taking anything from the great folks of Oklahoma or Texas or any
Kansas.
of those.
We were in Kansas for all those tornadoes. Yeah, we know.
Yeah. And one day I was actually out and I was doing something. It was at an MDU, multi-dwelling unit. I was walking behind some apartment complexes and I heard the alarms going off, you know, to signify, hey, there's a tornado warning or one spotted. So I'm basically hauling butt to get back to my car. I come around this corner and there's an entire family out on the back part of their home. Just watching the sky, watching the funnel cloud, and I hear one of them, "Is that a funnel cloud?" I'm like,
"That's what I do."
Get back. Yeah. So we took off running. So I tell people often, they're like, "Okay, well, you all will come out look at tornadoes, but you can't drive in 1 inch of snow." Let me say this: it's not the snow, it's the ice. And when snow, and I'm not saying that parts of Northeast, the Northeast, they don't get ice, but it's a different story. I can drive in 10 inches of snow as long as you have no ice.
Yeah,
and if
we know.
Yeah. And if we're prepared for it and we have the machinery to move the snow like some of these other areas do.
Which you guys don't.
We don't. So it's not the 1 inch of snow that everybody wants to make fun of. It's the 1/4 inch of ice or 1/2 inch of ice that we get on top that makes it bad. That's why we choose not to drive. That's why we can't drive in it.
Yeah, you guys got 2/10 of an inch of ice.
You can't do
last
much.
week.
You can't do anything on ice.
Yeah, nobody can. If a B-52 can just slide right off the runway,
plane just turn and go sideways and almost hit your building, it's time to close the base, and it did.
Yeah. 4-wheel drive does not work on ice.
We crawled to work that day.
Nope.
He backed up. he was trying to leave the trailer that back then, and he kept backing up.
Yeah,
because he had rear-wheel drive.
Had to go walk across the field from the barracks to our shop.
I guarantee
they crawled to work.
So, yeah, it's
like, why are we here?
So no, my thing is here it is. It's the weather isn't horrible after it stopped raining, but Hardee's easily sold out of food. Mm-hmm. It was like 10 o'clock at night when they finally closed down. We ended up having to walk to In-N-Out from the Days Inn, which is about probably about a mile and a quarter. Mm-hmm. We had to walk because the road was so packed. There was nowhere to park because everybody and their brother decided they had to go out and eat. So I wondered if anybody even cooked.
Is that the violin cracking?
Yeah, it's the violin.
It's him being a dick is what it is. It's him being a dick.
Well, but I do want to say my heart goes out to the people that was affected by Hurricane Helene. That was a tragedy. And I'll say this, even with the fires going on in California, my heart goes out to them too. And I don't know if everyone has saw or not, but they're calling for another cold snap in about another week. And yeah, before we only got like an inch of snow here, but that doesn't mean that we're not immune to getting the occasional snowstorm of 8 to 10 inches. It happens every 10 to 15 years. So we're due for one.
Yeah, you got a storm pattern coming through there next week.
Is it? Yeah. Are you supposed to get a storm or just cold? I thought it was just getting cold weather. Are you getting a storm too?
Yeah, it's showing storm.
Oh,
and again,
it figures because my kids moved.
And I don't know how much moisture is going to be packed in this, but we are due for one. And typically, when a big hurricane, you look at 1989 when Hurricane Hugo came through. Yeah. It unsettles the atmosphere. So maybe we didn't get it the first time. We hadn't got a decent snow in a few years.
Yeah.
You know, so
you're due.
Yeah, they're calling for you guys to start seeing some stuff. Well, in Easley on Tuesday night, a chance of frozen precipitation. But you know what? We got to go. We got a birthday party for a very special 4-year-old here in a few minutes or in a half an hour. But I'd like to thank you so much for coming on, and we're going to have you back on some other time with maybe an agenda so that we can get more into the weeds. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming and listening and being here. We appreciate each and every one of you. Please join us on Monday night for the Paranormal Pride at 7 p.m. Central. And I'm not telling you who my guest is in case they cancel. So, but you will find out who my guest is on Sunday and join us here each and every Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Central for Paranormal Nation Radio, Not So Normal. And Carl, I'm going to let you tell them where they can find everything at.
They can find us at the Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment's Facebook page, Things Network Facebook page, which I'm part of Things Network of Missouri. Denise and Ron are the chapter in Florida, Things Network. And you can find all our shows on the Dark Realm TV app on Roku and Fire Stick. So make sure you go over there and check that out. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for showing up tonight. And we will see you next week here on Paranormal Nation Radio, Not So Normal. Have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.